Okay, hello everyone. We're here with our fourth Candidates for Assange panel. We're going to be talking some about the hearings that just happened, February 20th and 21st. We've got kind of a skeleton crew at the moment. We think and people are in the middle of campaigning, and so, they may be running late. So we may have some people come in a little bit. I know that most anyone that's been following this case probably has heard that this hearing, we talked about it last time, that the hearing was supposed to be public, and a public hearing became very difficult for journalists to even get access to, applying, way ahead of time. It's just been a mess. So I actually, late last night, I ended up talking to this guy right here. Let me share my screen. Okay. 1 second. I want to say, it takes a village. So many people have been involved in this case, doing journalists, activists, performers, everyone. And this guy, let me pull this up. He, 1 second. Okay, here we go. Hopefully that's it. Sorry for the little wonkiness. Hopefully that works. Okay, can everyone see that? Okay, this is Matt. I'm going to mess up his last name. Brannon. And he has been wearing this orange jumpsuit and this placard, chalkboard around his neck for the last year and a half. And he says it's definitely a conversation starter. He wears it out to the grocery store, to everywhere. And so anyway, late last night, I was trying to find out more information because early in the morning, both days, I was on Twitter, jumping back and forth between Consortium News, Kathy Vogan and Stefania Marizzi, and Free Press, Assange, I believe it was, trying to sort of figure out what was going on in the courtroom, because there were all these reports of people couldn't hear and that sort of thing. So I happened to see that this guy, I was mistaken at first. I thought he was in the courtroom, but he wasn't in the physical courtroom, but he had remote access. And even getting remote access was nearly impossible, and you had to be in the UK to get the remote access. I mean, it's crazy. So anyway, very late last night, I ended up chatting with him on messages, and I said, hey, you have a minute or two, you could just tell me about what you saw. And we ended up talking for an hour till 3 o'clock in the morning, his time. So I made a really short little clip just to kind of, he was in a cafe down the street, remotely listening to this, and he sat and he drew some sketches, which I think was great. But it also illustrates just how crazy this thing is, that we should have video cameras in there. We should have this is a huge case. The whole world is watching, and we have to rely on people, drawing sketches and half hearing what's happening. So anyway, I will play this clip now. Okay. Bear with me.
You could see her body language going in. There's a little sketch of her, the body language going in. Her arms were folded, waiting for it to begin. She looked very tense. And as she presented things, her voice never carried with any weight of conviction. They were arguing about one of the cases that Assange's defense had pulled out, when she argued that this wasn't relevant because that person was not in the jurisdiction of the United States. You saw that. You could just see people looking up hang on, wait, did she just say that? The reaction you could see on the faces of the U.S. counsel, they were clearly, visibly defeated. the body language, the slumped shoulders.
Did the judge have to tell one of the attorneys to move the paper from in front of the microphone or something, that they were trying to like cover it?
That did happen. I don't know why. It might have just been an accident. As you say, it's only guessing. And but at least they fixed the audio for the U.S. Representatives quite quickly, unlike the Assange case the day before.
So sorry about my ratio there on the, it wasn't covering the whole screen. Anyway, it was a late night and I was trying to get all this together quickly, but I mean, what have you guys heard? Have you guys been watching any of the mainstream news? Because Matt, this guy, pointed out that there was a lot of still misinformation in the headlines and everything.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But the whole, how farcical it all was, where even those in the courtroom couldn't hear what was going on. Right. So, I mean, it was just kind of almost that this was this very symbolic, or this is a apt kind of, description of the whole aspects of hiding the truth and of disinformation and of censorship, right? All the themes that are resonating, to us from this persecution and this prosecution of Julian Assange played out these last 2 days, because people who were just a couple meters behind the lawyers couldn't hear what was being said, let alone the journalists the journalists. Not only couldn't they hear what was being said, but the first day, the journalists weren't even provided tables to do their work on. So, I mean, they were just given chairs, and these are people who are going to be utilizing their laptops or taking notes, and you just say, we're not going to give you the ability to utilize a table. But then I think the worst part of it all, of course, is that Julian, who could not attend the hearing because of his health, was unable to hear or see any of this. And of course, that just is one more example of the great injustice of this all, where you have a man accused who's not even able to face his accusers, right? And not even able to hear what's being said. And of course, his health is in such a state because he has been made a prisoner without any conviction for 12 years now. Mm-hmm. So I thought the whole thing was farcical, and it would be humorous if it wasn't so tragic, if it wasn't such an assault and defamation and destruction of an individual, as well as, of course, what we talk about a lot, the dangers to our First Amendment and to a free press.
Right. Looks like we have John Hearton from Florida's 8th District.
Oh, great.
I am. I'm actually going to turn my camera off. I turned it on for a second just to let you know I was a real person, not a bot. But as you spelled on, and so that way I don't, I probably need to pay attention to that and multitask as in drive and listen at the same time. So
okay, great. I may just I don't want to mute you, because if you're driving, never mind. We'll just leave it.
Please be safe.
Yeah. Safety first.
Careful, John. Yeah.
Safety third.
Okay, so I guess I should also say, I've said this last time, I'm not an expert on this case. And so when I talk to candidates and they say, I'm not an expert, or I don't know enough, or whatever, and they don't think they have anything to add, you have to start somewhere. There's been such a blackout on this case that everybody's at a different level of understanding. And I just want to say, I'll do this every time. Get Stefania Marizzi's book, or she's in interviews everywhere. She's great. Kevin Gostola as well, The Dissenter is his website, I believe. He does great write-ups constantly. Nils Meltzer's book. Of course, also go to Assange Countdown to Freedom. It's live on the fly on YouTube. That's the show I worked on for 4 years. A huge library of interviews that Randy Credico did. And so, yeah, there are plenty of resources out there. Our goal here is really to try to galvanize people, efforts, collaborate with everyone, and specifically candidates running for office. So that's why we're here. And so we've got two returning candidates, Phil Anderson and Katrina. And let's see, you're in Wisconsin and Colorado. So let's see, anyone want to jump in, talk about what you heard on the news about the hearings? Or
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd like to follow up with what Matt was saying. I mean, it seems like the whole farce in the courtroom of people having access, and even the people in the courtroom being able to hear and just be set up to actually perform journalism is a metaphor for the whole problem, right? From the beginning, this is all about keeping somebody silent who is telling the truth, and that's actually going on in the courtroom as well. And it also occurred to me that a couple days ago that, one, and this is sad and maybe fatalistic, but one of their goals might be that, that he die in prison, because that would effectively silence him too. And that's, there's the jail sentence that he's facing in the United States if he's extradited, but there's also, the threat of, if you're performing this kind of journalism and publishing, if you're helping people reveal the truth about what their government is doing, then you may end up getting sicker and sicker and dying in prison. And that's just terrible. And the other thing I was going to mention is that the stateside reporting on it was absolutely atrocious. If you just Googled Assange extradition hearing, most of the headlines were, Espionage Act, caught spying, all this stuff that's just patently not true. And any of these so-called journalists who are writing these headlines and these articles, you'd think would, number one, be accurate, and number two, feel a little bit invested in this case, but clearly they don't. So it's just yesterday was like a big metaphor for for everything that's happened so far and why it's such a tragedy.
Yeah. Katrina?
Well, I don't have too much to say at this point, but I've been thinking about the concept of just the law, U.S. law, and what end does law, basically what is the point of law? And when we look at the U.S. Constitution, we have these concepts that basically we build our laws around, and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when I think of what happened with Julian Assange, I'm going to return to this. I have a neurological disorder, and I had some incidents a little bit earlier, so I'm still kind of getting my brain together. But I want to return to this because I think it's really important to talk about. But I'll let my brain get back to normal. So
that's okay. I understand. I have leaks, CSF leaks, not as exciting as other kinds of leaks. But anyway, I found on Matt O'Brannon's page as well. He did tweet some things here. I don't know if you can see this. He's just a couple of things. Sky News. This is all in the UK, I guess. But Julian Assange created grave risk to U.S. agents in war zones, lawyers argue. So they put it like lawyers argue it, but it's stated as if you just see that and you think, oh, it just reiterates that misinformation, right? And then why is WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange facing extradition? Well, okay. WikiLeaks founder put people at great and imminent risk, court hears. I mean, lawyers lie all the time. So they just put it in a headline that way, then it's the general public thinks it's the truth. And that's just a constant battle of fighting this misinformation.
Well, as I understand it, the prosecution's case hinges on not just what WikiLeaks did, but Julian's, alleged and supposedly alleged, whatever, I want to make this as loose a claim to the truth as possible, offer to help Chelsea Manning hack, supposedly offering this hash wherein Chelsea could hack into whatever Defense Department stuff that was eventually released. And as I understand it, in the court-martial hearing for Chelsea Manning, it was they couldn't prove it then that Chelsea used any help from Julian, that there was just a communication about it, allegedly, but there was no proof that it actually happened. So
Right.
that should result in them, a double jeopardy thing, right? Because if they didn't find that was true before, they shouldn't be able to retry that. But of course, that's not really their goal, is to prove the truth, but it's rather to
Right.
chill journalism and publication of the truth.
Well, first of all, a hash, and I had to consult some IT security experts, but a hash is it's basically impossible to crack.
Right.
But more importantly, they can't prove there was a chat log, and they cannot prove that was Assange anyway. There's no evidence of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was everything except some State Department cables. I don't remember exactly which ones. Maybe Matt knows, but or anybody. But Chelsea Manning had already leaked almost everything before that chat log thing happened.
So that's completely without merit. Yet they're going ahead with this, which tells you pretty much, and we've been fighting too. I'm sure all the candidates that have been on here and across the country that support this effort have been trying to work with their current sitting legislators to try and get some attention to this. And it's just been darn near impossible to even get them to listen or pay attention, regardless of whether they're Democrats or Republicans. And that should tell us everything we need to know too, right? Anything bipartisan like this, where they're in lockstep, the majority, at least, if not all, both sides of the aisle, really doesn't mean anything's true or good. It means it's usually evil and deceitful. History has shown us.
Well, I want to check and make sure, speaking about getting the attention of legislators, I know some good things happened in Milwaukee. And so Ann Batiza, I think I'm pronouncing her name correctly,
Yep.
It's going to come on in a little bit. And I don't know, Gmail was sending my email to somewhere else or to spam. I'm not sure. So I hope she got the link. Okay.
I can send her to her too, if you want.
Okay.
I sent it to her, and I emailed her, and I sent it by text. So I'm not. Hopefully, she'll be able to join us.
I did send it. It's right.
Weird. But it's great. It's great what they all did out in Milwaukee, and Katrina and John, for your awareness, the Milwaukee Democratic Party passed a resolution supporting House Resolution 934, which is the resolution in the U.S. House urging that Julian Assange not be tried for espionage, be treated as a journalist, and that the United States government respect press freedom. And so it's really great to see a local organization, a local political organization like the Milwaukee Democratic Party get this passed, and have the willingness to do it. And John, are you able to? Do you want to chime in? Are you able to talk now, or I want to make sure we're including you?
Well, he is driving, so
yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask: was that in Milwaukee? Was it the result of activists kind of holding the Democratic Party to it, or were there people within the Democrats who really wanted to do this?
Well, Anne it looks like she's not connected yet, but she was going to come on and talk about it, but I'm sure Phil knows stuff as well. I think we were kind of thinking we'd leave that to the end, but we can go ahead. I just want to give her the chance to talk. I don't know. She's it says devices not connected. Let's see.
Yeah, I wasn't involved at all with the Democratic Party of Milwaukee.
Oh, well, I meant the activism.
But I can tell you that she and others organized people all over the country to send postcards to every single member of Congress. I actually have one here. I organized a party in Madison. We sent out 435 postcards, one to each member of Congress, asking them to sign on to House Resolution 934. And Ann organized that whole thing, which I'm very grateful for. So we'll wait to see if that has results, but Ann's awesome.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to know the process of how that happened. Did they start in their city? Did they go straight to the state? I'm really interested in that, because I'm exploring the concept of how local governments can inspire, the federal government to take action. So I would be interested to learn more. And so you said this woman had experience that you're going to bring on? Okay.
Hopefully, if we can get her connected here. My question I want to know is, there were 33 yes votes for this and 9 no. And I want to know who they are. But, well, okay, while we're seeing if hopefully, Ann, I think we lost.
I just got a text from her, Kelly, saying that she's on, but her camera and mic are off. So, but to, Kat, your point about how important this is, because a lot of times people think, what does it matter to do these at the local level? What does it matter at the state level? And it shows public interest. It shows the public willing to act on something and to vote on something and to donate on something. And so, say in the case where we're seeing a lot of local action with regards to urging a ceasefire in Gaza that's occurring in cities and counties across the U.S., that's demonstrating to the people at the federal level that there's a very sincere interest, that there's a genuine desire among the American public to see a ceasefire in Gaza. And so the same thing, to your point, if we can get this along on the same lines for Julian and for WikiLeaks and for press freedom at the local level, well, that will inform people at the national level that this is something they should be paying attention to.
Yeah, it's just too bad that many of us didn't have that foresight to get, to do this long before this hearing. I just never thought to really, for example, go to my city council or, go to the state and talk about this. But I know that there are supporters. I just don't think they're organized.
So Ann made it. Yay. I guess we might as well, since we started. I'm sorry, was John trying to speak?
Yeah, I was
go ahead,
just
John.
going to say one of the and I come from a little bit of a different background. I actually owned one of the top cybersecurity companies in the country for a while for services. Serial entrepreneur that's just decided to run for Congress, and it's one of those things that a little bit of a different stint on some of this. And I dealt with a lot of the national security and DoD type of aspects. So I think that's really one of the key questions in this is, how do they define the impact on national security? And understanding that is probably going to help people understand what makes sense in Assange. They're saying that it adversely impacted.
I can't hear anything.
Yeah, it's okay. I think his mic's going out a little bit. I really
National security.
Sorry. I'm glad you brought that up, and I mean, I think we need to hit those concerns head on and talk about them, because a lot of people are concerned about that. They're like, "Oh, he put people at risk," and I don't know. We couldn't hear everything you said, so I don't know if you want to try to. Do you want to try to repeat? Sorry.
I'm happy to. I'm sorry, I got a bad signal. It's
That's
one of
okay.
those things where when you're driving an hour and 15 minutes away from where home is, and making presentations all up and down the east coast of Florida. It's not always to have the greatest timing, but yeah. So what I was saying is I actually came from the cybersecurity realm. I had a company that dealt in cybersecurity and multiple ones, and wound up, a serial entrepreneur type that's just decided to run for Congress. So, and I was involved on issues of national security and so forth. So what we really have to find out, and I think what's imperative on this is how are they defining national security and the impact of what he did on national security. So if it's something where you're putting individuals at risk, if it's something that you're putting nations at risk, that's completely different between those two alone. And so I think it's better to have a good understanding of this. And quite frankly, for one, somebody else who's actually estranged and out of the country now, a lot of what they were doing was exposing the government on their spying on citizens, and not this case, but in a different case, and is that really a matter of national security when the government is doing something that's contradictory to our Constitution? So that's basically understanding the differences between these kinds of situations are important to be able, from a legal standpoint, um, to be able to address them head on.
Anyone
I
want
would,
to?
oh, sorry, were you
No, go
talking?
right ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to respond to that. And I think that, the war crimes that, Assange and WikiLeaks exposed, those put our national security at risk because it put our reputation as a country at risk, in my own opinion. And, we have so much corruption as is. So, there's a man in my district who says he believes that Assange should have been given some medals, and I would have to agree with that. He was protecting I know from a certain standpoint, it looks like he was, betraying the US, but really he was protecting what we supposedly hold dear and, our integrity and our reputation. So, I mean, I know that I don't know if that would really hold up. And, if you were actually arguing that in court, it would have to be a lot more polished, I know, but I guess I'm a little bit idealistic with that. And, the national security risk was these war crimes putting our reputation at risk, because that weakens our strength in the world. If I don't know if enough people catch on, which everyone knows how many bad things we do, but eventually it's going to catch up. Like China and Russia are like, we're not using US money anymore. That's kind of like one step of the world kind of disconnecting from us, in my own opinion. And the UN Security Council voted on a ceasefire this week, and literally the US was the one country that vetoed it out of 13 countries. So I don't know if this is making sense, from the outside, but on this end, it makes sense to me. So, yeah.
Well, I think unfortunately he probably just dropped off again because he's driving. But I think it's important that we keep talking about the fact that this is about him publishing the leaks that Chelsea Manning gave to WikiLeaks. So the whole conspiracy to hack and all that really doesn't hold water when you look at the evidence. So I don't know if John was able to hear what I just said there, but you're a cybersecurity guy, so maybe, I mean, you understand, this stuff about, well, first of all, attribution in a chat log. I mean, they never could even say that was Assange anyway. All the leaks happened prior to that, as we were saying. I think it was before you came on. We were just talking about that. But if you can hear and you want to address that, but there was no hacking. That just doesn't hold up.
Right. Yeah, I'd be happy to. I got to be honest with you. My connection is, I missed about half of probably what you said, and I apologize for that. My connection is not the greatest. So
we appreciate you.
What I might suggest is that, yeah, I'll try and maybe the best thing to do is send me out the opportunity for the next get together, and I'll be in a position where I'm probably a little bit more stable. So
that would be great, because having a cyber
interference.
No problem. I think that would be great, because I think having someone that understands this cybersecurity stuff would be good to kind of go over it a little bit more. So do you want to try and talk more now?
Good.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and get off so it doesn't drive in nuts here on that end. But
okay.
But just send me the information on the next get together, and I'll try and set that aside. Okay. Thanks so much.
Okay, great.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, same time next week. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Okay, so I thought before.
I think Phil was going to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's all right. Thanks, Matthew. I just want to follow up on what Katrina said, which I think was really sharp. I don't think the rest of the world kind of knows the war crimes that the United States government commits because they're suffering from them. Anyone in the Middle East or Eastern Europe or Iraq or Iran or China or all kinds of places all over the world that we probably don't even know, they know what we're doing. And the reason that this persecution is going on is so that the American public, who generally unwittingly, I think, but some people wittingly, give their blessing and their money to. And as long as that continues to happen and the American economy is what it is, and we can, at least for now, afford to have our government overseas plundering other countries and toppling dictators and doing all kinds of unspeakable things, all they have to do is to hide it from us or to obscure it in some way. And so that's the whole point. It doesn't matter to the federal government, to the Department of Justice, whether he's guilty or not, really. They just want to have some kind of believable charge. Now, people that are involved with candidates for Assange, and all of you here, and probably most of the people listening, know that it's BS. But the general public, who are going to swing elections and get people like, hopefully people like Bobby Kennedy elected, are generally less informed about this, and that's kind of the whole point.
Right. Right. And whenever I hear something like that you and Katrina just said, Phil, I'm reminded of what Neil Sheehan said. Neil Sheehan was a New York Times journalist during the Vietnam War. He was very much involved in the Pentagon Papers. And when the whole Pentagon Papers, when it was all said and done, what Sheehan said he learned most from that experience was that the government doesn't keep secrets in order to protect the American people from some overseas enemy. The government keeps secrets from the American people to protect the government from the American people. Right. So it's what is the whole purpose of all this secrecy? What is this the purpose of this assault on a free press, on an assault on truth telling, on criminalizing journalism? What is the purpose of that? And it's to keep hidden from the American public, the actions of their government. And so I'm wondering, like, Kat, when you and Phil, when you guys are out there talking to folks as you're campaigning, what's the kind of general sense among people you're talking to in terms of their views on this, in terms of their views of what their government is up to, whether it is internally or externally?
I guess I'll go. So you're asking about transparency then in government? And
Well, yeah, I mean,
sorry, go ahead.
Transparency or transparency in general, or our constitutional rights, whether it's First Amendment or Fourth Amendment, as John was bringing up, which is so important because the assault on the Fourth Amendment is running concurrently with this assault on the First Amendment. But also too, or what you spoke about, Kat, the war crimes and what our government does overseas. So when you're out there talking to people as you're campaigning, do these subjects come up?
Oh, definitely. I mean, Colorado is a huge First Amendment state. I don't even know if that's a fact, but it just seems like it, just based on the people I speak with. And even if you follow people, on social media from Colorado, wherever they are in Colorado, the First Amendment is really important to people. And I mean, I said this last time too, people in my district, and I'll just speak for my district. People in my district are smart people. That's my sense. And, they care about these topics where, government transparency and, First Amendment rights. So I know I'm not really telling you anything new. So, everyone that I've spoken to about this situation, the Assange situation, they understand the weight of it, and how wrong it is, basically, to punish someone for telling the truth and using the law in a way to serve special interests instead of serving, the general point of our law, which is, I mean, you can't really say to uphold good, that's kind of vague, but, if we're talking about like national security or, our rights to like I was trying to get to earlier, you know, our rights to life, liberty, and happiness. It just, yeah, I'll have to see there. I'm trying to have a breakthrough because I'm chewing on this concept, and every time I get to it, it's like I have like a block. But I want to talk about it eventually. But I'll let Phil answer your question, Matt. But then I actually have something I wanted to say in regards to the royal courts, and you know, so I'll pass it over.
All right, thanks, Kat. And my experience has been that a lot of people, even people that pay attention to politics and care about these issues, libertarians and many others, haven't been following it all that much and have been more accepting of the official story of it. And as I have explained, like, for example, when we did in Madison, our postcard signing party, I was at a coffee house and there were some people there that were curious. And so I ended up talking about the issue to a few, and they could only handle a little bit of it, I think. I think the larger issue is that this is such a huge thing. Once you like push the camera back and see the whole perspective on it, as I described in my previous comments, that Americans, probably all of us here and almost all Americans, have this sort of pride in who we are, and that we're proud of what our country stood for, what our Constitution stands for, and all the ideals of our founding. And when they're confronted with the truth of this situation and others as well, it becomes a lot for them to absorb without just shutting it off. So I'm pretty careful about how I talk about this situation, because when we start talking about our own government deceiving us so that they can do terrible things with our money and our representation, and the rest of the world is the victim of it, that's a lot for people to swallow, even people that would, you know, generally be on our side, support the First Amendment, etc. So you have to be kind of careful to not drown somebody in medicine, I guess is the way I'd put it. Otherwise, they'll have a hard time and they'll just shut off. And I think that's pretty common in our politics today. When we talk about issues that are painful for people to hear, it's easier for them to shut it off and just move about their day and not worry about it. Label people, maybe like us, maybe a lot of people, as conspiracy theorists, when in fact all we're doing is telling the truth about the situation. So we got to be kind of delicate.
Right. Well, we played that great Meltzer clip about the psychology of denial. I can cue it up again, or I guess we've covered it. We'll say, unless anybody want to hear that again, or we'll save it for next time. Yes, no.
I'm always, I mean, that's my favorite one, but
okay, well, we'll play it again.
I can watch that anytime. But Kat, Phil, have you seen that clip?
I have, but I think, you know, we're broadcasting to people that this might be their first time seeing.
True. Okay.
Well, so we should probably
let's do that then. All right, here we go.
In order to divert attention away from the monumental revelations made by WikiLeaks that prove, you know, these hundreds of thousands of documents that prove that it's not that, you know, the rule of law and democracy is threatened. What we can see here is that by and large, it has already been kind of neutralized. You know, there is a parallel universe where intelligence services are cooperating behind the backs of their own parliaments and their own people. And the diplomatic cables give ample evidence for this. And in order to divert attention from the war crimes and that corruption and the torture, it's a well-known technique. You just, you know, take the spotlight and put it on the individual and say, here's a traitor, a rapist. He doesn't feed his cat. You make a simplified, juicy story that the average citizen can understand and can handle, because now he has a scapegoat he can blame, and then the system remains untouched. So the elephant in the room disappears, vanishes somehow in the shadows. It's very irritating to see that the public allows this to happen. But this is just human nature. This case even triggered my interest so strongly that I studied this together with a neuroscientist and a social psychologist and submitted a report to the UN General Assembly on the neurobiology and the social psychology of precisely this pattern of denial. We human beings, Randy, you and I, Daniel, Angela, all of us, we don't like to receive uncomfortable news. So if we hear something that we don't like, we have almost, biologically an instinct to deny it, to push it away if we can. That's our biological functioning operating system. That's just the way we are. And this is being exploited because by the leaders of the countries, because if you accept that the system is corrupt, well, what does that mean? It means you have to change the system. Well, that's complicated. That's difficult. It's a lot of work. That's uncomfortable. You don't know how to do it. So so actually you're relieved when you can just blame Assange. You see?
Yeah.
It's the easy way out that everybody likes, because now we can blame somebody and we don't have to worry about the system. And unfortunately, that's very much a reality until people suffer so much, like French Revolution or so, that they have to react and rebel against the powerful. When it becomes more painful to remain passive than to actually rebel, then they react.
And if I might add to his comments, obviously right, spot on, but that's the genius of how all this evil genius of how all this works, right? Is because the purpose of what our government is doing is to maintain America's economic position in the world through acquiring natural resources, whatever, having a domination of the world with the dollar diplomacy, etc. So what they're doing is, in the French Revolution, there was a crisis that the people rose up, and by the Federal Reserve and our constant warfare all over the world, we can afford that people are still eating and entertained, have bread and circuses. So we're much less at risk for people rising up because they're still comfortable and there's not a huge crisis, at least not right now.
Yeah. Well, we're on panel 4, and I haven't played Collateral Murder. I've got a 1 minute and a 30-second clip, but I'm not going to do that in case Katrina might have a headache. So I'll save it for another time. But I'm still amazed that a lot of people that I speak to, that I run into, haven't seen it. They don't know what it is. And that's the reality. And so I think a lot of us that are in this community of activism, we think, oh, that's just common knowledge, but it still to this day is not. And, as far as like national security, well, I guess it threatens the U.S. reputation if it becomes known that there were these war crimes where they shot up a van full of kids, these U.S. military guys sounding like they're playing Call of Duty. And they have not been, they're free, that nothing happened to them. And so Assange, who just published this that was leaked to him, is the one that is being held in, I think it's 23 hours a day, solitary confinement in a maximum security prison. And I've got one more clip I want to play here. I played it on one of the other panels, but it's specifically about how he's being treated in court as well, and how, how are we doing this to a publisher, not someone that murdered people or anything like that. This is how he's being treated in court. So this was in reference to a previous trial.
We have a photo here of what it looked like, Julian Assange. You look at him in a glass cage, a bulletproof glass cage, and look at what you see 50 years earlier, 60 years earlier. It's almost the same situation in Tel Aviv with Eichmann. All right? Eichmann actually had access to his lawyers in the courtroom and was treated better than Julian Assange. And he's the mastermind of the Holocaust. All right. And now let's take a look at another person that was held for extradition, and that's General Pinochet, who murdered 30,000 Chileans, including Spanish citizens and Garzón. This is him under house arrest. Look at that. Tough conditions, huh? With Maggie Thatcher.
The comparison with Eichmann is particularly chilling. And it's one of the things I genuinely don't understand about this whole situation with Julian in Britain. even if Britain had already decided that they were going to accept the demands of the United States and eventually deport into a supermax in the US this whistleblower, this publisher, this journalist. I don't quite understand why they have chosen to be so utterly beastly about the whole affair. There's no reason for him to be in a glass case. He's accused of having published documents. He's not a terrorist or a murderer. He's not a war criminal. So why keep him in those circumstances? Why strip search him 9 times in one morning on the way to court?
Intimidation. It's not about him. I mean, it is, but it isn't.
Right.
It's about the larger issue. So anyone, any journalist, any potential leaker, any potential publisher sees what's going on with him and sees that he's dying in prison and has this huge 175-year sentence hanging over his head. That's what it's about. It's not about him specifically.
Right.
I was did you want?
No,
Something?
go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to I have a few things I want to talk about, but I thought of something. I was speaking with my chiropractor today. She's like one of my best people to talk about politics with. And, you know, she said something that I think is really spot on is, you know, they are trying to control something that is uncontrollable. And there are some personalities and some, I guess you would say, revolutionaries, and they can't be controlled by, you know, these things that are meant to put you in a box and keep you there, you know. And while you were playing these clips, I was even looking at, you know, I didn't know why Assange left Ecuador, for example. So I was kind of looking at that, and it looks like they evicted him because they didn't play along with like some norms that they had. And we have a big problem with control, and but these people that are trying to silence him. But anyway, I'm going to switch gears because I wanted to ask you guys about, the royal courts and, the US and the UK and their relationship. Because the reason I'm bringing this up is because with the Gaza and Israel situation and the Russia and Ukraine situation, the US and UK have actually been kind of buddies, even if like indirectly. And so, when I was looking at all of the comments and feedback from the Assange hearing, to me, it seems like, wow, this is good stuff. I feel like it could go in his favor, but, you have to wonder if, so just for example, this recent UN Security Council voting on a ceasefire, 12 countries voted in favor of it, 1 abstained and 1 vetoed it. The one that abstained was the UK, and the US vetoed it. And then I don't know if you guys have heard, but last year apparently Russia and Ukraine and NATO, I don't know if it was NATO, but they had a peace agreement that they were ready to sign. And the US apparently, I don't know if it was Biden, I'm guessing it was Biden, obviously, sent the UK to actually stop them from signing it. And I know that sounds conspiracy theory or something, but that actually happened. So what I'm trying to say is reading all the comments that, some of the journalists were writing, that, some of the stuff that went on in the hearing, it's like, wow, this is really good stuff. I feel like he's going to, he might have a chance. But then the fact that this is the UK, and that just kind of concerns me, just based on these two situations, these two big wars that we're, involved with right now. And, the UK and the US kind of buddying up. And so that is kind of what is concerning me about this whole hearing. I don't know if you guys have any, response to that or feedback from the special interest aspect of it. It kind of concerns me. I mean, not kind of, but really.
Anybody? Well, I was just going to say, like Meltzer says in that clip, there's all this stuff that kind of goes on behind the scenes. And yeah, we don't know. It sounds favorable, but we don't know. The Ecuador thing, or excuse me, the Ecuadorian embassy situation, we'll have to get into that on another panel, because there's a whole lot more there to that story. But we are coming up at 10 minutes to the hour, and we want to try to keep it concise. So I want to bring in Anne, unless Phil, did you want to answer that, or?
No, I'll make way for Anne. I've done a lot of talking.
Well, actually, let's answer Katrina's question, and then we'll do that.
Well, the one thing I wanted to ask, and I think if what I heard was true, it would support that, is that the original, like those false rape accusations from whenever they were, wasn't the reason that those happened in Sweden because of the fact that if he had gone to Sweden, Sweden would have easily or happily rendered him to the CIA and to the United States, and that was why that happened. Which kind of, assuming that's true, and I heard correctly, that really lays out what Katrina was talking about and how everybody is working. All of Western Europe is working for the CIA, and they're only doing it as far as they'll do it as far as they can get away with it, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not really about sovereignty in different nations making those decisions, at least not once you get below the surface. It's about the reach of the American intelligence community / military industrial complex and the influence that they have way beyond our borders and across the Western world.
Right. And that story about the sexual assault allegations and that's something too, Kelly, we should just do a whole episode on. Mm-hmm. Because I mean, that is just even this point about the way the British were involved in that, and the Swedes kept trying to drop the investigation. There were never any charges, right? There's so many things we can unpack about that, mm-hmm. and deconstruct and clarify, right? But there was never any charges ever brought against Julian Assange. And throughout that whole process, throughout those years, a number of times the Swedes wanted to drop the investigation because the Swedes knew it was bogus. There was no reason to charge him with this. And the British would intercede. The British Prime Minister's office would intercede and contact the Swedes and say, no, you got to keep going with this. You cannot drop this investigation. I mean, so the whole thing was just, that's just one more example of just how duplicitous, how deceitful, just how drenched in mendacity this whole thing is, and all meant to fill the point you brought up at the beginning of the show here about how the what occurred in the courtrooms these last 2 days served as a perfect symbol or allegory or metaphor or whatever you want to call it for this assault on the truth, this attempt to obscure and to deny transparency, right? I mean, so there's just one story after another, Kelly, that we really could just do whole episodes on, right? And I think have great interactions and discussions. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because
we'll have to do that.
Yeah, but we got Anne here, and I know Anne. We had talked earlier before you were able to come on about what you all did in Milwaukee in terms of getting the Milwaukee Democratic Party, to pass this resolution supporting the House Resolution 934. And Katrina, in particular, was asking about the process that you had for that, how you did this, and so if you want to. I'm sure we're all interested in learning more why you were successful.
Well, I think that we were successful because at the same time that this resolution was being considered, there was a resolution for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. And so a lot of people had come for the permanent ceasefire in Gaza resolution. And I think that our two communities actually have a lot in common. And I think that's why it passed. It passed with a vote of, let me think, I think it was 33 yes to 9 no, which I was shocked. There were 70 people on the call, but only a subset of those could vote. We had 1 minute to describe our resolution, and I didn't even get through, what I had planned to say, but I guess the fact that truth matters in war, I think, is something that brings our communities together.
And would you mind if I ask you some questions?
Oh no, go ahead.
Okay, so are you an activist or a legislator, out of curiosity?
I'm an activist. I'm a part of the steering committee of Peace Action of Wisconsin, but I'm also on the National Organizing Committee for Assange Defense.
Okay.
And
sorry, go ahead. Oh,
Oh.
so I'm just kind of curious about your process. You know, were you reaching out to, you know, I'm guessing you went straight to state, and, you know, were you working within your local community, or did you, you know, reach out to your state legislator? Like, I'm just kind of curious about the process of how you did this.
This was just local. This was the Milwaukee Democratic, well, it's actually Milwaukee County Democratic Party. And it was serendipitous for me because a friend of mine who is a very strong activist, Jim Carpenter, was bringing the Gaza resolution along with 11 other co-signers. And he shared with us what his resolution was. And he said, if you, to the Peace Action community, he said, if you have other resolutions you'd like to bring, this is the format you need to use. And this is where you submit it. And so I did. And then I went to the meeting. And so really the background organizing, because he had brought that resolution up at a previous meeting, but they didn't vote on it. I think that there was a lot of organizing around that resolution. And it happens that our communities overlap.
That's excellent. Wow.
So I think it'd be easy, not easy, but I mean, I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility for this to happen in other meetings. And to be honest, I was flabbergasted. I didn't expect the result that we got. The Gaza resolution was passed 35 yes to 3 no.
So, so what are you guys going to do with that then? I guess just present it to the federal government, you know, like what's the next step?
The next steps in locally, we have to go to the county meeting, then we have to go to the congressional district meeting. It has to pass. There are only 10 resolutions that then can be taken on to the state. So I think there's some opportunity for filtering out things that the party doesn't want, but that's the process for getting it to the state convention.
Okay, and so when did you guys pass this?
Gosh, Sunday, the 18th.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, the reason I'm so interested is I was invited to speak at a ceasefire rally this next Tuesday at my city council. And I know that, you know, city council doesn't, you know, can't directly influence the federal government, but, you know, if small communities start taking stances, it's going to have a ripple effect. So I was kind of curious, you know, for the Assange, you know, reasons, but also for this, you know, these pro-peace reasons. So,
well, I think this was a surprise to many people in the establishment Democratic community. I know Stella tweeted out the fact that our resolution passed. And so it maybe along with the Gaza resolution, maybe it serves as a wake-up call to those who are in DC. By the way, we had recently been to DC to talk about these things. Maybe it sends a wake-up call to them that your constituents are on a different, they have a different understanding than you do. And maybe it's time to listen.
We can still hear you, but your picture froze. But I think you're right. We had a candidate on another panel, Sean Doherty in Washington State, that said that this issue is kind of cracking open. It's changing things. So it's you know, unfortunately, it took that. But I want to get into, before we end here, let's talk about another thing that people can do locally, and maybe even candidates can get involved in this as well, and organize one of your, let's see, I think I've got 2 slides here. Okay, so Anne, do you want to explain this, what you're doing?
Okay, well, we have an anonymous donor who's funded sending out 50 postcards to every member of Congress. And we're doing this by sending out a box with cards, with stamps, and labels. And so people around the country are hosting these parties. So far, we've had 21, I believe. This is our local group here in Milwaukee, filling out postcards with a message with our individual address and name so they know who it's coming from, and then a message. And in the right there, you see all 432 cards addressed and with a message to every member of the House to support House Resolution 934. On the front of the card are 4 abuses of the process in the Assange case, and this is why it's impossible for him to get a fair trial in this country. And this card was designed by Paula Iacella. Paula had prepared another card as well for House Resolution 934. So really, it's the two of us who spearheaded this campaign. And my contact information is on the bottom there, batiza@msoe.edu. And so this has been tweeted out. If you're interested in hosting a party, you can contact me. And or if you're interested in being part of a party, I can tell you where they're occurring in the country.
Okay, just one second. I think we've got a different, what do we have? It's your name at AssangeDefense.org, or there's a different email?
No, at the bottom. Oh, it's on the next page. Oh, you've got a different one. Sorry. It's Batiza. It's my last name. B as in boy. A. T as in Tom. I-Z-A at MSOE for Milwaukee School of Engineering.edu.
Great. Excellent. Well, that's what this is all about. This is what we want to see, is people across the country doing whatever they can on every level. So I want to thank all of you so much for being here again. And I think it's great that we'll hopefully have more new candidates next time, but anybody that wants to return, be a regular. That's cool too. So we're going to go out. I've got a new song. This is Candles for Assange. And I apologize, I forgot her name, but she's Candles for Assange on Twitter. And this is a street performance they did, which was really cool. So good night, everybody.
Now you need the light. Stand up for your right, yeah. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Fire from the distant distance, dying or to heaven in your instant sin. We know and we understand. Almighty God, that we when you've done something on some time, but you can't for all the people all the time. Now you see the light there, and stand up for your right. Get up, stand up, stand up for your right. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Life is your right. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Never give up the fight. We never give up the fight. We are Assange now. We never give up the fight. Stop the war criminals.